to believe in.
Prior to Geoffrey of Monmouth in the 12th century, there were oral and written traditions concerning Arthur. But most of what we know of him is due to Geoffrey, who published his highly imaginative History of the Kings of Britain in the late 1130s. Without him, would we have even heard of Arthur? Would the subsequent developers of the story, Wace, Chrétien de Troyes, Layamonte, Mallory and others, have written about him? Does Geoffrey ultimately deserve all the credit?
It's always risky to guess at what would have happened if things had gone otherwise. But Arthur's fame before Geoffrey was strictly among the Welsh, Cornish and Bretons, the Celtic peoples of the West, descended from Britons of his own time or apparent time. If Geoffrey hadn't expanded the saga into a history that was read throughout most of Europe, it might have stayed regional and never inspired authors outside. The Irish had a hero something like Arthur, Finn MacCool, and stories of Finn spread to Scotland, but that's as far as they went. No one like Geoffrey took him up, and he never attained international renown as Arthur did.
We know that over the years, King Arthur has proven to be a motherlode of source material for writers and other artists, and it has been said that even some reigning English monarchs found ways to put the king to work for them. Can you explain?
English kings during the Middle Ages definitely believed in Arthur. It was good for their morale and good for the crown's mystique that they should be heirs of such a famous monarch. Practical politics were involved. Edward I claimed to rule Scotland on the ground that Arthur had ruled Scotland. Later propagandists for the Tudor sovereigns, who were part Welsh, made much of their alleged Arthurian ancestry, and it enhanced the prestige of the greatest of them, Elizabeth I. Later again, Tennyson's best-selling Idylls of the King, a poetic evocation of Arthur in terms of Victorian ideals, helped to revive the glamour of the crown when dissatisfaction with the actual Victoria had laid it open to attack.
The evidence for Arthur before Geoffrey of Monmouth seems to consist mostly of sketchy entries in ancient chronicles, obscure battle poems, and credulity-straining episodes from various saints' lives. Shouldn't someone who had been so successful in conquest, and who was the center of a glorious court, have left more of a trail behind, with better documentary support?
In Dark Age Britain, we have to recognize various adverse factors, such as the loss and destruction of manuscripts by invading armies, the character of the early material, oral rather than written, the decline of learning and even literacy among the Welsh monks, who might have kept reliable records. The whole period is plunged in obscurity from the same causes. People who were certainly real and important are no better attested. An old Welsh text with some historical pretensions says Arthur was the leader of a national counter-offensive against encroaching Saxons and won 12 battles in widely separated parts of the country. The passage is fairly circumstantial, and there is at least something in it, since counteraction did happen sporadically over 4 or 5 decades. I think it likely that Arthur played a conspicuous part in it at some stage, but his status as a long-term supremo could be a retroactive promotion inspired later by the growth of his legend. It may be factual. We must face the possibility, but it isn't. Insufficient data.
When did Arthur actually live, if he did live?
He's usually imagined as living in the Middle Ages and going around in castles with knights in armor and magnificently dressed ladies, but he certainly didn't. As I said, his legend in its best-known form was a medieval creation, and authors in those days didn't care about authenticity like a modern historical novelist. When they handled a traditional story, they updated it, putting things in terms of their own time, irrespective of when it was supposed to have happened. This shows in art as well. In illustrations to the Bible, for instance, you'll see a painting of the angel appearing to Mary, and a window at the back looks out on a French chateau that couldn't possibly have existed in Nazareth. So with the Arthur story, characters in a milieu which the authors knew quite well to be ancient were still dressed up as knights and ladies appropriate to the 12th or 13th century. Neither Arthur nor any of his circle would have been like that. To answer the question, He really belongs in the late 5th century or the early 6th, a mysterious phase after Britain broke away from the Roman Empire. He may indeed have been a king, but it's hard to say what kingship amounted to.
The study of Arthur seems to be becoming a literary pursuit rather than a historical one, and perhaps with some justification given the scarcity of hard evidence. What about archaeology? Do you think that can ever tell us anything about Arthur? Or is it?
Alright, next I'm gonna I'm gonna go to the thinking questions. Alright, question 1 is, according to Jeffrey Ash, why did the Arthurian legends become popular? Why do people continue to tell them? Second question, who does Jeffrey Ash credit for the Arthurian story gaining popularity outside of Britain? What is his response to the interviewer's question about the lack of solid evidence surrounding Arthur? Third question is, what contributions can archaeology make to the study of Arthur? What contributions have Jeffrey Ash and his colleagues made? Fourth question is, identify context clues in text that suggest the meaning of the word adverse as it is used in conversation with Jeffrey Ash, using those context clues. And then the last question is, use the context clues provided in the passage to determine the meaning of the word fortification. That's all I got.